I had a customer that I met with that placed a very small order. But over a period of 4 years, I was able to go back and track the referrals that that one customer gave me. And it accounted for over 60% of all the sales I ever made in that company started with one person. There's always going to be leakage. Just like in a boat, there's always water seeping in. That's why I have bilge pumps. So they're naturally going to lose customers because they move away, because another competitor steals them.
The value of one person, in my mind, is extremely important. You have to win people. People have to like you, like your product, your service. You're spending money to bring people in, to grow your business, to grow your company. For what? To mistreat them? Our topic today is really going to kind of dovetail off of our last episode, but we activated our reticular activator in our brain, right? It's like you buy a red Porsche and now all of a sudden all you see on the road is red Porsches. And so now, for the last week, you're right, you and I are just focused on AI and, maybe ways that we could introduce AI into our own personal businesses or our own personal life. Certainly, with the podcast and helping with our episodes and show notes, not to give any secrets here, but we have a little help with some AI, but that's been fun and it's interesting. So this week, Nick, we're going to dive into rethinking customer service in the modern era. And we've got some great key points here, some great examples, some great stats that we're going to share with our listeners. So I'm excited to dive right in here.
Yeah, and I think it's really, like we've talked about in past episodes, I think a lot of business owners, they look at kind of like advertising and marketing as a necessary, as an evil or it's an expense. I have to do it, but they kind of drag their feet. And I think it's gotten to the point where many businesses now, they look at customer service really the same way. They're like, I'll have to do just the bare minimum instead of it's a retention tool. And so it'll be really interesting as we unpack this today for our listeners to really dive into some things that maybe are happening all around us that we just don't have an eye on. And the whole premise of today's episode is to kind of get your eye on the ball on understanding how consumers, because they have all this technology at their fingertips, they expect different things, different level of service today than they did 5 years ago. And if we're still operating like it's 5 years ago or 10 years ago, it really puts us at a competitive disadvantage.
That's right. I want to share something with you, Nick. There's a crazy stat on how fast consumers will ditch brands after just one bad experience. 52% of consumers will switch to a competitor after one experience. And when you think about that, I mean, Nick, you're a consumer, you're a homeowner, right? Whether it's a restaurant and it's bad service or bad food or bad environment, right? Dirty environment. Nobody wants that for a restaurant. Think about somebody that you're hiring for your home, whether it's a painter or a plumber or a roofer. They don't show up on time, right? They don't use the right materials that they sold you on, right? So I'm sure you've got some examples and experiences.
Yeah, it's probably really good that we didn't do this podcast about 8 hours ago because I had an absolutely awful experience today with a bank that, quite frankly, they lost my business today. And I've been there 17 years. So I have 3 different banks that I use because of different businesses and personal accounts. And I've spent a lot of money's gone into those accounts over the years, in and out with all the business expenses. And literally 17 years, they lost my business because of one situation today. And the part that really what happens is, I made a deposit just like I normally do. And then randomly there's a 10-day hold on it. And so I'm like, oh, that's kind of weird. And so, call in and talk to the first person like, oh yeah, the manager can make that, manager can take care of that. Talk to the manager like, nope, I can't do that. You're out of luck, basically, with no empathy. And was like almost bothered that we were asking about it. Like, well, okay, who do I need to talk to? Well, I guess you can call customer service, and really kind of blew me off. So that left a little bit of a bad taste. And then I spent 3 more calls with customer service going through everything. And, it got to the point where I'm like, hey, wait a minute, there's no rationale. Either this is some AI program ran and said, well, this is a little bit out of normal sequence of patterns. And it was deposited through the ATM, which I always do and things. And then they're like, hold on, let us call the branch manager and see what's going on. So they actually put me on hold to call the branch manager, and then they come back on. They're like, yeah, the branch manager said they're not going to take care of it. And so after spending about 2 hours, I called back to the branch manager. I said, hey, I'm just got off the phone with the corporate office, and they're telling me that you can make the decision, that they can't make it, but you can make it. You're telling me you can't make it, that they make it. So
Hmm.
I feel like I'm being lied to. And I said, I don't like that feeling. And then immediately it was like, oh, no, I didn't say that. I said, I won't do that. And I'm like, no, you said you can't do it. And, and I'm like, so is it you guys don't trust me or you don't trust the check that came in because it's from a national company that everybody in here
Mhm.
would know, very large mutual company. And it just went back and forth. And the guy was just very dismissive and didn't even try. And so, a couple hours in, I'm not normally the one that does this, but I actually called and made a formal complaint. And then I had somebody
Mhm.
call me back and he, explained the situation. And he was like, yeah, I can understand why you're upset. This is not okay. I've got to talk to this person. How you treat. I'm like, you already lost my business. Just so you understand. 17 years, you just lost my business. The only question is how many other businesses, because I
Yep.
have a lot of other people that I know that also bank with you. And this level of service, if this is how you guys operate now, just because, you don't care, that's not okay. That's just not going to fly. And so that was a situation where I got that call. And I was like, man, that's disappointing. Not that the policy, I can understand some of the policies. It's how I was treated and how I felt leaving the
Mhm.
call. And I know it's kind of a long answer, but when they say things like, well, we're doing this for your protection, I'm like, no, you're not. You're doing this for your protection. There's
Mhm.
nothing about this policy you're saying here that actually benefits me as a consumer. So don't try to
Yeah.
spin it that way. But again, most people aren't ever going to challenge them on that. So that's just one example. It's fresh in my mind about how they dropped the ball.
Yeah, and the way that their customer service representatives and branch managers, you're right, it's one-sided. And then they spin it like, "Oh, we're just trying to protect you." Well, that just doesn't make any sense. And so when us as a consumer feel like we're being mistreated, misled, misguided, or quite frankly, sometimes lied to,
Yeah.
right? That is the kiss of death. And you take too many of those hits, and all of a sudden, you look at your Google reviews, and when you're striving, right? We all open a business and we're like, we're going to get all 5-star Google reviews. We're going to treat people fairly and we're going to do the best that we can. And then all of a sudden, we lose sight of that because maybe we're so focused, growth minded, right? We've become transactional in a lot of cases and we lose that personal touch. And then we all know the difference between spreading positive word of mouth and
Hmm.
spreading negative word of mouth. Negative word of mouth spreads substantially quicker, right? People talk more and tell their friends and families and neighbors about bad experiences, right?
Yeah, I've always heard, when somebody is really ecstatic about your service, they tell a friend. When they
Mhm.
don't like your service, they tell five,
Mhm.
right? And I just think it's because when we feel like we're mistreated, if I had an awesome experience with a bank today, I might have talked about it on the podcast tonight, but probably would have spent a few minutes on it. It would have been very like, yeah, they did a great job. And so it's like you want to sing their praises, but there's an emotional response that people have when they feel mistreated, when they feel
Mhm.
dismissed, when they feel talked down to, right? When they feel like they don't matter. And the reality is felt very much like a number versus a customer. So when you hear, well, it's clients, we're trying to take care of people, it's family, but then you feel like you're treated like a number, it's really hard that even builds more distrust, I think.
One of the things that I want to point out is the challenge in client acquisition. The premise of what we talk a lot about is being a business owner, marketing and advertising and growing your brand, growing your business. Well, you have to win people. People have to like you, like your product, your service, right? So you're putting together this business plan, this marketing strategy, you got a marketing budget, you're spending money to bring people in,
Mhm.
to grow your business, to grow your company. For what? To mistreat them? The value of one person in my mind is extremely important. Not only did I spend the money to create the visibility to bring them in, to get that call, to get the email, to get the online inquiry, and to what? Mislead them, misguide them? Makes no sense to me. And that is just like you touched on. Companies being so focused on simply transactional and not relationship based, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think the reality is there's acquisition cost varies obviously from one company to the next. The value of an individual customer varies from one industry to the next. We get that. But there's always going to be leakage. Just like in a boat, there's always water seeping in. That's why I have bilge pumps. So they're naturally going to lose customers because they move away, because another competitor steals them. They change insurance, whatever. There's going to be things that happen, right? There's a divorce happens, there's a death in the family. It could be anything. But when you are losing customers because of the silly things that you're doing as a business, that's not normal. That's taking a flare gun out, shooting into the floor of the boat, and wondering why all the water's pouring in. And
Uh-huh.
it's really hard to build speed on a boat if you have excess water coming in. And as a business, it's twofold. It's yes, we have to add new clients, but the best businesses understand we have to retain the clients that we already have. So the more we keep that rate high, the less we have to bring on the front end to have the same speed and acceleration. And so I think that businesses have kind of forgotten that it's just not the same as it used to be. It used to be there was loyalty, and
Mhm.
today's world, some of that is the society we live in. Some of it's, I think, businesses, the way they've treated customers. Customers now are like, well, you're not loyal to me, so I'm not going to be loyal either. So I think it's a little bit of society. It's a little bit of how businesses operate. It's just the nature of the being. So that's why this is an important topic.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
Yeah. So really, what we want to do is we're trying to kind of go through this process, right? It's given them kind of the sci-fi villain treatment. We're going to break it
Mhm.
down to the three kind of pillars of modern support. We've got smart automation. So not just automation, but smart automation. We've got hyper personalization, and then we have turning support into the growth engine, which I kind of just referenced there. So you want to dive in and talk a little bit about what that looks like as we kind of try to stay away from that villain status.
Absolutely. And I think as we transition here into our next point, it's really about and what we have to strive for is the perfect blend or balance of the automation, right? So we've got this AI boom and we talked a lot about that on our previous episode. And I love the efficiencies of generative AI and the modern line, the chatbots, right? There's a time and a place for those. We should absolutely insert those. One of the things that I love is that Nick, when you're on a website, how you can have the automation chat
Mhm.
where, maybe it's after hours and I'm on a website and I want to, ask my plumber, like, hey, I need this, I need that. Well, oftentimes, the business is closed, but that will get pushed over into the support team, a salesperson, the owner, and so it never misses a beat. And so that's one example that I would say of that AI or that modern frontline chatbot that you can integrate in your business to give a positive communication, a positive experience through utilizing AI. But you can overdo it, right?
Yeah, when you're dealing with AI and chatbots, it's great if I'm ordering a pizza at midnight because they're not judging me. But when I have a real issue that requires some EQ and some emotional intelligence, they have the ability. They're basically like a toaster as far as personality goes, and so it's good in one way, but it's also incredibly infuriating on the other side when we want them or you're sitting on the phone, you're like, they said, what do you need? And I'm like, speak to operator or speak to representative. And they go, pick number three or one, two, or three. I'm like, speak to representative. And you say it like 9 times. And pretty soon you find yourself yelling at the phone going, speak to representative. And all of a sudden the phone disconnects because you had too many attempts. And you're just like, what happened to the good old days of just somebody answered the phone and you told them what department you need to talk to and they put you through, right? Those days are gone. But what's happening is we're seeing some companies saying, hey, it's actually coming back a little bit in some places, saying it's actually more productive, even though it costs us more money. The math
Mhm.
shows us that it's better to spend, a few $100s a week on that receptionist than it is to save that money and lose customers.
That's right. Yeah, and think about that infinite loop that you were just describing, and it's like every time, whether I wanna call my bank, my security system, right? It is so frustrating that sure, have them answer it and just say, simplify this automation. Like every single one of them should have a press 0 or press pound to connect with a live representative. Every single one of them. And so to speak 9 times and start yelling at the phone, I'm with you, Nick. That drives me nuts.
Yeah, yeah, it's like, it's not only the speaking, but, like, if you got a customer that's, a person that's crying about something, or they're typing in all caps because they're really angry, and you keep getting the same type of response because, again, there's no emotion attached to that. It's kinda like an email in general, right? Really hard to convey emotion in an email. When we're chatting with a bot, it's really hard to convey emotion, intention, nuance, and with people, you can do that a little bit better. So, it is, again, it's a two-edged sword. It's great in many ways, and as customers, we're really fickle. It's like, I'll
Yeah.
just say this, if I go to a store and somebody comes over and they're like, "Hey, can I help you?" "No, I'm just looking." I don't want them to bother me, but I want them to be close enough that as soon as I have a question, all I have to do is turn and look at them and nod, and they rush right over and drop everything else they're doing. That's what I want as a customer, right? I don't want to be bothered, but I also want them so close that, just far enough away that's not bothering me, but close
Mhm.
enough where I can get them at an instant notice. And I think that's kind of what customers expect today.
Yeah, you have to integrate that balance like we mentioned. It's like I think about email communication, I think about text communication, and I don't like it. I don't like it because it's so not personalized or personal. It's so emotionless,
Mhm.
right? Like if I text you, you can totally take that out of context, right? I can do all caps so you know that I'm yelling at you or something like that. But I think that is a line of communication that we really have to be careful with. One example, I surprised my wife. We've got the Morgan Wallen concert coming up this next weekend, and so I bought her a cute little country looking dress. I bought it online, looked at the size. I thought, okay, this I think that this will be good. I think she's really gonna like this. I did send a picture to her. She was like, "Oh, that's really cute. Thank you so much for thinking of me." So I ordered it. It arrives. It is nothing like what the picture, right? This is something that is made some factory somewhere, and this is supposed to be a South Carolina company, and it's not. And we were very disappointed. And so, how do I get in touch with customer service? Well, I've got an email them. So I emailed them. I had to send a photo. And what do they want to do? So you don't have to hassle with returning it. What if we just give you a 50% credit? You can buy something else. At this point, you've lost me.
Yeah.
You sent me something that is nothing like what you described it online on your website, your 5-star reviews. You sent me garbage. Now I just want to send it back to you. I want nothing to do with your business, and I just want my money back.
Mhm.
And they want to try to solve my issue and continue. They want me to order more through their website after this bad experience, and it ain't gonna happen. I'm gonna be one of those 52% that's
Yeah.
gonna go find somewhere else, someone else, something else.
Well, I'm just really glad you said it was for your wife, not for you, because I can only imagine a cute dress at the Morgan Wallen concert. So, no,
Nope. Nobody
I
wants to see that, Nick.
no, nobody needs to see that, right? There's always said there's some things you just can't unsee.
Right.
When I think of great customer service, um, I think of a restaurant, right? And there's a number of times I've gone into a restaurant with all the travels I've done, and you see 3 or 4 or 5 people standing around. Maybe it's a fast food place and nobody recognizes you. Everybody looks right past you. Nobody says hello. And you sit there and you're like, really? And then there's other times you'll go into a restaurant and the person, you can tell they're running, scrambling like crazy. They'll run over real quick, go, I'll be with you in a second. I got to go grab this. Hey, cool. No problem. It's just amazing how that extra little effort, that 5%, just recognizing, hey, you're here. I'll be with you 1 second. I got to grab this, goes so far. So I think about best restaurants, and I think most people think of Chick-fil-A as they've got the model of they just go above and beyond all the time to make you happy. And it's not that they never make mistakes, but they just are friendly and go out of their way. And I think of Costco. I mean, their return policies are insane. You could take
Yep.
something back a year later and just, okay, here you go. And
Mhm.
they know that they're going to get used and people are going to take advantage of them sometimes, but they understand. So it's a customer retention tool and they've done the math. They're not dumb. So those are two companies I think are really doing it right.
Mhm.
And one in a restaurant, one in a retail setting. I think they just do a tremendous job of taking care of people.
Absolutely. I want to go back to that Chick-fil-A example. Think about this is, Truett Cathy, the founder, had a vision. He created a mission statement. He created a culture statement on what was going to be acceptable and what he was building. And decades, Truett Cathy is no longer, right? He's passed on, but the family that still is in charge of Chick-fil-A from the very top, they only hire franchise partners who model Truett Cathy, who believe in, yes, they are a transactional business,
Mhm.
but at the end of the day, we have gotten here because of how we treat people, the quality of service, the way that they greet you, my pleasure. If your chicken sandwich is cold, there is no questions asked. They'll make you a new sandwich, they'll make you new fries, and they make it right then. It's that simple.
Yeah.
And that's what a consumer expects today.
Yeah, and I think more importantly, it's not that I just happened to be at a restaurant where the manager or the person there was nice and took care of me. It's everyone you go to. And so when you see that no matter what location you go to, you get that kind of service, you understand that's institutional and that's a
Mhm,
structure and that's an expectation and that's behavior that's been modified over time to create that environment. And I think that's really, really important.
mhm. Absolutely.
Yeah. I think as we also think about, you talked about the agentic learning last week. We talked about excuse me, personalization.
Mhm,
As a customer, you get really tired of saying the same story over and over and over, right? It's like, oh, I talk to somebody, give my whole story, and then they go, let me transfer to this person. And then they come back and like, okay, so what's going on? Or what do you need? And you're sitting there like, by the time you get to the third or fourth person, you're like, this is crazy. I'm sure you've had something like that happen to you too, right?
Nick, it's like going on a fourth date and the person asks, "So, what do you do for a living?" I mean, come on. Instinct date killer, right? Romance killer. I've got an example. I wanna share a story. You shared yours about the bank. I'm gonna remove names of companies. Ultimately, they ended up resolving my issue, so it is with my home security system. And I recently upgraded to the newest, greatest, latest 4K, night vision, all that for my surveillance cameras. And everything was installed, and they were supposed to just put this into my bill every month, right?
Mhm.
No, they charged my debit card the entire amount for the equipment. Now, for some people, that would be a killer. I called customer service. I said, "Why did you guys do this?" So I had to explain to that person, and then they had to patch me over to client loyalty. So I had to explain to that person. And then they're like, "I'm gonna make this right. Here's what we're gonna do." I said, "Okay, that's acceptable to me." And that was last week. Well, here I am this week explaining to this person, explaining to this person. And finally, Nick, today, I have finally got it all ironed out. And it has taken every ounce of patience with me to not just say, "Come get the equipment out of my house. I'm going to go a different direction and use your competitor."
Yeah. Yeah, it really is. I mean, but again, what people are doing there, they're playing defensive, right? The mistake's been made. It's how quickly can you recognize, okay, yep, we made a mistake, something's not right there. Let me get on that. And that's
Mhm,
really what customers want. I don't think customers expect any company to be perfect. But what they
mhm,
do expect is when you make a mistake, take care of me right away and don't try to give me a bunch of corporate speak and don't try to give me off your script. Let's just talk to me as a person. And I think that's really, really important. And then, really then we have to think about it in terms of, okay, we've spent this money in getting them, right? So we talked about we've got to have the right amount of automation, right?
Mhm.
And it can be used smartly. We've got to then hyper personalize it. So we got to
Yep.
have the notes and take time to read the notes versus telling me the story over and over and over. But how do we then turn it into actually a growth engine? How do we turn it into not only I didn't lose customers, but got them, I converted them to a raving fan where now they tell more people, they expand their services, they bump up their packages, all those type of things. So let's talk about how do we kind of reframe the mindset of not just keeping customers, but how do we grow our customer base from our service department?
Yeah, and how do you utilize the customer service and turn that into a marketing tool, right?
Mhm.
It's like companies that spend millions of dollars on marketing and billboards, but then they route their customer support to a broken email inbox that replies 3 days later. Makes no sense, right? So, we have to really think about the way that I think about this, Nick, is the path least resisted. And I always try to put myself into a consumer, right? Like, what is my experience or what is my desired experience from I saw that commercial or billboard or ad in a magazine. Now I'm in the bicycle, whether I make a phone call and I want to get somebody out here to give me a quote, whether maybe it's on Instagram and I send a DM. Well, do I get an auto reply? Do I instantly get a text message from somebody in charge or the owner
Mhm.
or the salesperson? Do I get a phone call to schedule me? Here's another example. I was on Instagram earlier this week and a concrete company ad popped up. And I really liked their little reel and I really liked the verbiage that they utilized. It really enticed me. I thought a concrete, any concrete project is going to be expensive.
Yeah.
And in this ad, they address that it doesn't have to be expensive and how they hate it when companies gouge customers. And I fully agree. That's something with our painting company that we really, really try to be very fair and deliver, exceptional quality. And so I sent this message, instantly got a ping back saying thanks for inquiring. If this was intentional, please reply yes and we will reach out directly. So I replied yes. So some people might reply or do something accidental, so I think that's a smart move. I get a phone call 3 minutes later by a human being who walked me through the process of what I can expect, and I have an individual coming tomorrow afternoon to look at the scope of the work. So far, I'm very pleased. That is a combination of modern tooling and AI combined with open communication and personalization with a human being. Flawless.
Yeah, it's funny. I was trying to look on my desk real quick. I guess I'd moved up already, but I think of something. It's kind of like if everybody is going down the highway and they're all going to the left, then I kind of want to go to the right because I know there's a lot of traffic to the left. If everybody's doing it a certain way, and then if you can stand out from that, you break the pattern. You really stand out. And I think when we gave that example of Chick-fil-A, they are
Uh-huh.
super attentive, which is not like what you get with most fast food places, right?
Mhm.
They take the time to do it right. Why is Costco so good? Because most stores don't have that kind of policy. They're very by the book. You don't have the receipt, this and that. But they're just like, cool, we'll take care of you because they kind of gone away from the mainstream. So, yeah, it's easy to send an automated email. It's easy to do some of these things or a text message, and then there's all kind of programs for that. I got
Mhm.
invited to a realtor that I know pretty well, has done some work with, and he invited me. He goes, "Hey, we're just having an open house a couple weeks ago." And it was cool. He said, "Come on over. We'll pay for your first drink and just kind of hang out and kind of talk to him and catch up." And, we had a good time. I got a personalized handwritten note thanking me for coming out to that event. Right? There was
Mhm.
probably 50 people there, s you know?
Yep.
I don't think he probably just wrote a handwritten note to me. I'm not that vain about it, but the reality is he invested some time in doing that. But I promise you, that made an impact, a handwritten note or a video email or something like that. And I
Mhm.
think that's where we're going with this. It's finding out a way to use your opportunities when somebody calls in to accelerate their experience, accelerate their purchases with you versus just try to hold on to them.
That's right. One thing I just wrote down, and as we wrap up this episode, think about the lifetime value. If you're a business owner, maybe you're a salesperson, maybe you're a marketing professional. We talked about the acquisition cost, what it takes as a salesperson to build that rapport, to build the value in your product or your service or your widget that you're selling, to close the deal. But it's not just closing the deal. That is the start of the relationship. When your marketing strategy works, Nick, and you actually have somebody that walks through your front door, that is the start of the relationship. That is where the work really begins. So, what is the lifetime value of your client? If you're a restaurant, do you want them to come back once a week? Do you want them to bring their friends, their neighbors, their family? Do they want to come? Do you want them to come and celebrate the special moments like the Mother's Days or Father's Days or birthdays? Right? If you're a high-end landscaper, do you want to just put in that $200,000 front yard? Or do you eventually want to earn the business to come back to put in a swimming pool or an outdoor kitchen? What is the lifetime value of your client? And when you have those numbers, when you have that running through your mind and it is highlighted in bold in your business plan, then that's how you should operate. You build your business and you build your company around who you want to be and the experience that you want to deliver.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And my final thoughts on this, I was very fortunate to have this lesson very early in life. I remember as a 19-year-old college student, I got a summer job as in the direct sales industry. And I had a customer that I met with that placed a very small order, actually well below the normal average. But over a period of 4 years, I was able to go back and track the referrals that one customer gave me and how much
Mhm.
business they did and the referrals they gave. And it accounted for over 60% of all the sales I ever made in that company
Wow.
started with one person. And because they liked me and because like I said, the relationship, the transaction happened, but because there was a trust there, it led to other things down the road. And so I would
Mhm.
agree, whether you're in a business that's a long-term sales cycle, 6, 12, 18 months, or you're in a one-call close business, the sale is the start of the relationship. It means we're dating now. But to marry the person, so to speak, that takes a lot of work. And so let's
Mhm.
not be serial daters. Let's have marriages with companies that can create long-term significant growth because we know we're going to lose some of them along the way, but let's not
Yep.
shoot ourselves in the foot.
The average business attrition naturally across the board. Now, it's going to vary per industry, but we lose an average of 20%
Mhm.
of our loyal client base due to no fault of our own. So we already are starting every calendar year 20% behind. We just lost 20% of our clients. So we've got to take care of the ones that are here. People are going to move away. People are going to die. We're going to lose customers. It happens. But I'll say this as we wrap up. When you put, or when that consumer, that customer, that client puts that pen to paper and they sign your deal, they sign your contract, that's when the real work